Thank you for coming,
It's a
Carlos.
pleasure.
And I wanted to talk through the journey of, from rep to manager to leader of managers to CRO of a successful massive exit to CEO and back to CRO and CRO again.
Okay.
And we'll talk about, living in Italy in between, but that'll be dessert for
Okay.
for
Well,
the rest of us. But I wanted to, since we're here and all, so like as a CEO, like now when you were a CEO, like what were the things that you observed from a board perspective, and what helped you, meaning like that you had on the board that helped you be a better CEO, given that you came from being a CRO?
yeah. Okay.
And the answer
So,
could be none. They didn't help me at all.
yeah, I had never been a CEO before, obviously, and I had some good board members who gave me, I think, who helped me prioritize and helped me understand how to work with the board. And basically, priority number one: don't run out of money. Like, that's the company's lifeblood, and that is the top job of the CEO. And so they helped me understand that. And another thing that I didn't really appreciate until they spelled it out for me was the importance of understanding how to leverage the board. So the joke was, the joke that was given to kind of illustrate that point was, hey, don't ignore the board or you'll get fired. Don't follow the board's advice too much or you'll get fired. And it's really like, the board's role is to be like a grandparent, to give advice, to give direction. But if they need to make operational decisions, either they're meddling or they have the wrong operators. And so really understanding that line, that separation was something I didn't really appreciate. Up until then, my boss tells me what to do and I go execute on it within some certain boundaries. But anyway, so those would be the two biggest lessons that I can recall back to my interaction with the board.
What your boss doesn't really tell you what to do. He just gives you the target and leaves you alone, doesn't he?
I
Like
mean, it
it's
depends on the seniority. Early in my career as a sales rep, yeah, they told me what to do. Here, like at PTC, my first job at PTC, Todd Klubnik handed me my accounts and said, "Go get meetings with them, and go and get ready to present to me your pitch." And so he basically said, "Learn your pitch and prospect." And those are my two like high level marching orders. But I think obviously as you get more senior, it's more about setting objectives and relying on me relying on my judgment and my experience to kind of determine a plan to define a plan for how to achieve those objectives.
so let's rewind back to, Carlos is a rep at PTC, and now you're getting your book of business and you're getting your pitch. So walk me through what is that like as you're making your way to management and leadership.
Well, uh, I think there's a kind of a couple humorous anecdotes in there. So first of all, PTC was growing like mad, and this is back in the days before open plan, so everybody had an office,
Yeah.
except didn't have any offices left in the office, and so they had a closet where they kept the cleaning supplies, and they moved out all the cleaning supplies and moved the desk into it, and so when they gave me my office, first of all, I was excited to have an office. I had never had an office before. Second, I thought it was kind of weird that there was no window and it smelled very much like cleaning supplies. And it was only a few weeks later that Dave Boyle let me know, you're working in the janitor's closet, right? Like, all right, well, okay. But in terms of how my territory was defined, this is not what I recommend for anyone listening that's trying to define how to define territories for a new rep. But this is how it was done. So all of the other reps had A, B, and C accounts,
Yeah.
and the the least conflict, conflict inspiring way to do it was to just take a handful of everybody's C accounts and build a territory and give it to the new guy. Of course, I didn't know that. And it was
Exactly.
actually,
Go get him, Tiger.
yeah, go get him, Tiger. Go get him, Tiger. But really what it was accounts that, in some cases, accounts that were, kind of reluctant, that were definitely like committed to the competitive technology. But in other cases, they were just customers that, or prospects that hadn't resonated with how the previous reps had approached them. And so there was nothing like unsellable about them. And so I sold a couple of these accounts not knowing the history, and my manager Todd really used them as a way to inspire. I'm using that word loosely, to inspire the rest of the team to go and prospect and take an open-minded approach to accounts.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did that propel you then to the management job, of the fact that you were giving the worst of the bottom and you still made hay?
I think so. I think it did. And I think I'm an organized, I just have to like organize stuff, and I'm kind of process oriented. And I think the fact that I was doing things in a very repeatable way, I think gave them confidence that I could then go and teach it to others.
You are the most organized sales leader that I know.
Here's my dirty little secret. It's an act. It's actually a cover up. I am actually, I think if left to my own devices, I would be like an artist, but I know that doesn't work in sales. And so I force myself to be organized. I have like notes, to-dos, and I block everything in my calendar, and I definitely have a process, and I define as much, criteria and milestones of it, but it's all to compensate for the fact that left to my own devices, I like to focus on whatever I'm doing at the moment, and I can easily sort of lose the forest for the trees.
This is like finding out that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Wait, like, what do you mean that you are an artist? Like, so how did it start? Like, when was the moment that it dawned on you that if I don't get organized and adopt this persona of the most organized sales leader in the planet, I'm not gonna succeed? Because like this is not at all what I think when I think of you.
There were some people on my team at PTC who were very successful sellers, but they were truly artists. And I could tell there was this constant conflict between them and the company. They didn't want to do things the way that the company said or the way that management said. And so even though they were successful and they made a lot of money, I could tell that they were not on the path to ascending within the organization. And I felt that what PTC was all about, optimizing processes and repeatability and growth. And I think I just intuited that was the way to be successful. And I remember I started creating folders in my laptop of different assets that had been useful. And in my spare time, I really wanted to be a manager. I would try to like sanitize them for, thinking about how I could use them in the future when I was a manager. But it was a conscious decision.
So you knew that you wanted to be a manager. So the moment you became a rep, you said, I'm not going to be a superstar rep and make all the money and stay a rep. I'm always going to go towards this management career. And that was clear to you.
Yes.
That's awesome. So
the reason changed. At the time, frankly, it was a little bit of like insecurity and feeling like my family sacrificed to send me to good schools, and I remember when I was a kid, my family, my grandfather in particular, he would like put me on his lap and, son, you're bound for greatness. You can do anything you want. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, basically go be a doctor or a lawyer, or else you're a failure. And so the fact that I was in sales, I wasn't even an engineer. Engineer was like a distant third. I wasn't even. And so the fact that I was in sales, I definitely felt a responsibility and a little bit of pressure to legitimize the career that I had chosen, and getting promoted into management felt like a way to do that. And so to be honest, that was definitely one of my motivations early on, was
That's so
to,
funny. This is I don't know. I think this is an immigrant thing and maybe a Latino thing, but this is definitely an immigrant thing that we have to impress our parents and our grandparents. Otherwise, the purpose of being here, we're kind of like fail, right? We made it to the country of promise and opportunity, and if we don't deliver, I mean, all the investment was for nothing.
that's
So
right. That's right. Yeah, maybe it is a Latino thing, but yeah, guilt. My grandparents were not afraid to use guilt as a motivator.
liberally,
We came from Cuba. We left the house. We worked 2 jobs. We like all this stuff.
all for you.
All for you.
What are you doing? You're selling. You can't be selling. You do something else.
That's right. That's right.
That's so funny because like here, you see two paths, right? One is you stay a rep, get bigger accounts. You can actually make a lot of money staying, just moving up in the size of account and books of business that you have as an individual contributor. Or you can go up the management route, but the management route has its own risk, right? Like now you're managing a team, right? So you can only deliver through the performance of other people. And so
Yeah.
the skills completely change. And when I see failure is when the manager tries to become a super rep. You see what I mean? Like I'm a great rep and I'm going to go do the work for you and close all your deals. And that is eventually fails, and it fails spectacularly. Have you seen that play out in your career?
Absolutely. I thought personally. So so when I became a manager, I moved to Dallas, and my manager, the second line manager, was a guy named John True. And John True was and is a very impressive guy, extremely smart, had been a very successful sales rep. Everybody at PTC knew he was the first, he closed a $10 million deal at Caterpillar. Our commission rate was 10%. And so he had a $1 million commission check. Everybody knew that.
Sweepstakes level check like
Yes,
that.
exactly. Exactly. And so now this is years after that. He's my manager, and he was just incredible guy. He pulls me into his office one day in Dallas, and I think I'd been working for him for about 90 days, and he says, "Hey, can I give you a little feedback on how you're doing?" And my knees were probably shaking. I was so intimidated by the guy. Sure thing. And he grabs a whiteboard, grabs a marker, and goes up to the whiteboard and draws a star. And he says, "You are a star manager. You start the week in Dallas. You go to Lubbock. Then you go to El Paso. Then you go down here. Then you go up here. And you end the week. You're just chasing the forecast and chasing these meetings. And if I wanted you as a rep, I would make you a rep. And so either become a manager, or I will have no choice than to assign you the role that aligns to the job you're doing. Your job is to develop and recruit and develop." And he was absolutely right. And that conversation was a real aha moment for me. And I can look back to that conversation as being the moment that my mindset shifted from thinking that my job as a manager was to deliver a forecast, and realizing that my job as a manager was to build a high functioning team that generated repeatable revenue.
Interesting. And what do you stop doing and start doing? So you got the star. So what happened right after that?
I stopped letting the forecast dictate my priorities. I stopped letting my team dictate my priorities, and I defined my priorities. And my priorities became recruiting. I still had some slots, and development. And those two things were more important than actually executing. And so if there was a problem in a deal, sure, I could jump on site and go solve it. And maybe I could do it better than the rep, or I could role play with the salesperson and get to a point where I was comfortable or confident that the sales rep could go do it, and let them go do it, or maybe go with them but not say anything. And so do the extra work required to actually build the skill and teach people how to fish, so that then they didn't need me the next time this issue came up.
So one of the things that I know, because you told me about it, was, and this is one of the aspects of your playbook that I find most interesting, is that in PTC, you used to have a team. And if somebody needed to open a new territory or find a new manager, they will go into your team, poach somebody from your team, make him a manager, and you still have the same number to deliver. So you needed, warm pipeline of candidates at all times to make up for that shortfall. So can you walk through that? Well, how that work and how do you make it work for you as a manager?
Yeah, well, it was a long time ago, and while that is how PTC worked, I actually don't think it did happen to me. I guess it happened to me right up front. So when I got promoted into management for my first time, the team that I inherited had been the top team in the company the year before. So it was a team of like really, really great numbers. The guy who was my predecessor was this guy named Scott Armstrong, who was awesome, really well respected. He'd been with the company for a long time, and now he got promoted. And everybody on the team that I inherited, perhaps with the exception of one, had been with the company longer than me. So I was in my I guess I was in my late 20s, or maybe I was in my late 20s at the time. And there were some people on the team who were, 40, and people who had sold a lot more than me. And what happened was the top rep on the team left. He was mad that he didn't get the job. And what I quickly realized is that then the next rep had had a great year, but it was on the back of one deal. And he was really kind of a relationship seller who had dropped this one big deal, but his work ethic wasn't great. And, he wasn't too accountable. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then go down from there. And there were, people who were not great performers, and maybe one that I tried to develop, one who needed to go. And so I went from inheriting what I thought was the best team in North America to inheriting a whole bunch of empty spots. And so my focus quickly became recruiting, and and recruiting is a hell of a thing. It's really hard to get started from nothing, but once you get the momentum and once you get the flywheel, the momentum builds on itself. So, you're doing interviews and you get referred to other candidates. You hire somebody great, and they, maybe someone else reaches out to you because they respect that person. And so I quickly got a lot of momentum and ended up building my team, and the momentum was still going. So I was able to hire AEs that they let me go to 6. But my 6th candidate was really good. They let me go to 6, and then I still had pipeline. So the 7th and 8th went to my peers, and so I helped them fill their slots. And I think that had to do with why then I was promoted again, and ended up in Europe in the next role.
Got it. So then walk me through, manager to manager or managers to, VP and eventually CRO. So what was the journey?
Yeah. Okay. So as a rep, you're making the number. As a manager, you're building a team that is hopefully self-sufficient and can generate repeatable revenue. As a manager of managers, I think you become the chief enablement officer for your team. At least that's how I look at it. You have to be able to look further out into the future than anyone, before you, below you, I should say, and identify either both skill gaps and gaps in the organization. And so specifically, I'll start with the last one. Looking at the first line managers, no one is going to develop them other than their boss, the second line manager. And so bringing the first line managers from wherever they're at to a point of sort of fully functioning and doing the entire job, but also assessing how big does my team need to be at a certain point in the future? And are the managers that I have in place going to get me there? Or does that mean I have to bring in other managers from the outside? Or are there reps that need to be promoted? And sometimes managers have a natural reluctance to want to promote their best rep because it leaves a hole. And so as the second line manager, you really have to be thinking about the organization as it exists today, but also as we need it to exist 6 months from now, and then do your recruiting and your development to kind of get you there. Furthermore, as a second line manager, I think you're in the best position to identify what are the skill gaps that are most holding the team back. And so I use Evernote, and I always have a little list in my Evernote called training topics because, everything, you can't stop anytime someone does something that isn't perfect and say, oh, now we're going to have a teaching moment and we're going to spend 30 minutes, right? So if I notice something, I'll put it in this training topics, and that becomes sort of almost like the bill of materials for how I build the weekly or the bi-weekly enablement. And the reality is first line managers, for the most part, are focused on the forecast and recruiting. And I think expecting much more than that out of first line managers is not fair, because just those two are really big and important. And so if that's the case, then yeah, they're going to do some coaching, they're going to ramp up their people, but who's really looking after the overall skill set of the team? It's got to be the second line manager.
And who does? At what point do you go from seeing the skills of the entire team to setting up the system? Is that at the VP level or second line manager, CRO? Like, where are you system builder as opposed to runner?
That's a great question. Nature abhors a vacuum. And so where there are processes in place that work, just use what's there, right?
Yeah.
Where we can innovate on top of them and make them better, do so and publish it up the chain, and you get a pat on the back, or maybe that gets, operationalized across the team. Great. But where there's no process and you see an opportunity or a need, then you just kind of build it yourself. And so I wouldn't say it's any specific role. It's just whenever I've identified that, hey, doing this there is a better way or a best way to do this. Let's define it. Let's train everyone on it. Let's do it repeatedly. Let's measure, etc. But I'd say there's certain things I operationalize as a first line or as a second line or as a head of sales. Certainly, the head of sales is ultimately responsible for that. But I'd say if I look at all the processes that I'm aware of that sort of represent best in class sales execution, I've innovated a few of them personally, but the vast majority of them were innovated by someone else, either someone above me that I learned from, or someone below me that said, "Hey, I figured out a better way to do this. What do you think?" Yeah, that is better.
So what are the ones that you shifted and lifted, and what are the Carloisms, right? So what do they call PGTs?
PG2s.
PG Tuesdays. Like, where did that come from? Is that yours, or is that lifted, or is it a combo of both?
It's a combo of both. So, I mean, I got my first sales job was in copiers, and so there it's PG mornings. That was seriously. There was a kickoff. There was a kickoff call at 7:30. It was a commission only situation. Kickoff call at 7:30, which is really just a half pep rally, half accountability, meaning if you're not in the office by 7:30, this might be your last day. Yep. And so by 7:45, everybody is actually I picked up the phone. No, it wasn't on the phone. By 7:45, everybody leaves the office and you're going around to office buildings collecting business cards. And then in the afternoon, you come back to the office and you're doing PG in the afternoon into the business cards that you collected in the morning. And the only respite from that is if you actually get a meeting and you get to go demo the copier, which means they put the copier in the van and they send it to the place. So
that's a break.
That was exactly. That was the respite. So anyway, so I'm no stranger to PG, from early days. and at PTC there were PG blocks, but there were more they weren't consistent in terms of when and how. And I think what I discovered was that if you ask people to PG, there's going to be always some prep that they need to do. Who am I going to call? What am I going to say to them? What's their phone number? What question should I ask? What proof point am I going to use? And it's sort of human nature that there will be a tendency to focus on all these prep activities because they're all safer and less scary than picking up the phone for fear that somebody might answer and I might sound stupid, or I might leave a voicemail and sound stupid, or my peers will hear me and I'll sound stupid. And so if we don't separate the prep work from the actual cold calling work, then we're going to have a very quiet PG session where everyone is doing a lot of prep and calling it PG. And so that was something that occurred to me, that it was like, we have to separate the two. So I would say that's an innovation of mine, is having a period of preparation that precedes the dedicated PG session. Another thing that became very, very apparent to me is that fear or hesitancy to do PG really just comes from a lack of preparation, a lack of confidence. And that confidence comes from both, number one, preparation, and number two, just hearing others and practicing. And so having everyone in the same room, not in conference rooms and that sort of thing, it's a little bit uncomfortable at first, but what happens is that that discomfort quickly wears off. And then it becomes like an esprit de corps. We're in it together. We're learning from each other. If somebody gets hung up on, we laugh it off. And if somebody leaves a great voicemail or has a great cold call, we learn from it. Maybe we write down what they said and we read it the next time. And so there's a real virtuous cycle that comes from separating out the prep and then doing it together at the same time in each other's presence.
The number one request I get from every CRO in the planet is, how do I get my account executives to prospect more? And everyone has a number that is somewhere between 20%, and it used to be 30%. Now it's 50%. So the majority of CROs are expecting somewhere between 20 and 50% of pipeline being generated by the AE herself. And the one thing that AEs don't like to do, by far, is to prospect. And the number one thing that helps more to have a great, consistency of delivery is pipeline generation. So it's really interesting that your method is not just utilized more, because the ability to get somebody to do something that they won't do is by breaking it down in chunks, right? Like, today we're just going to do this piece. Tomorrow we're just going to do this piece. So tomorrow, and I remember from talking to you that your entire week is surrounded around this PG Tuesday, right? So Monday you prep for Tuesday. Tuesday you run it. Wednesday you have the meetings. Thursday you start prepping for Friday. Friday you submit the list that you're gonna have, on the next Monday, call block with your boss, and then Monday begins. So like there is a rhythm, like a weekly rhythm of PG that just takes the science and the nervousness and all the anxiety out of it, because it's what you do. You wake up in the morning at 8 a.m. and you do X. You know what I mean?
Those aren't exactly the days, but that's basically the process. And yeah, you can take something complex and decompose it into its components, and it becomes a lot more manageable. And this dislike or hesitancy to PG, like anything else, just doing it makes it less unpleasant and makes it just normal. Just like you work out, you go to the gym. The first time somebody goes to the gym, it's uncomfortable and right. It hurts. And if you do it again and again, well, you get the benefit of oh wow, I'm a little stronger. I feel better, and you start to identify with the outcome as opposed to identifying with the unpleasant part or the work required to get to the outcome.
Yeah, I was just thinking about you because I was in Europe last week, and I went and did a call block with my team. And as I was going through the accounts, right, like the team set up this like really senior account CEOs and like CROs for me to call. And I'm realizing that like half the time I'm doing research, I'm like, shit, I should have done what Carlos does, which is I should have prepared the day before. I should have reviewed the account, figure out what are my openers, like why am I calling? You see what I mean? Like before, and then that day was just about execution. So I knocked myself on that one. And the second one was I got hung up on. And I think it was you. What?
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny because I think it was you that said that the fear of getting hung up on is like right up there with the fear of speaking and fear of death. It's like really high. Yeah, I mean, and until you get hung up on, like, you're finally done, you're finally there, like you're on the other side of it, and nothing happened, right? Like he's still there. So I got hung up, and then I realized that my problem in Europe was that I was repeating the person's name because it was across Europe, right? So all their names sound different. It's not like here where you have like, pretty much the apostles if you're a man, right? Like, Tom, James, yeah, I mean, and like you work your way through it. Yeah, exactly. And you're done, right? Like whereas there you have like this really complex names with a lot of consonants and you have no idea where the accent is. So you feel compelled saying the name first, and that's when you get hung up on because nobody calls for their name first.
They know you don't know them. Oh, that's funny. I hadn't thought about that. That's
So
good.
anyway, so that was a lesson learned. All right, so let's talk about the path to CRO. All
Okay.
right, so you became CRO. So was Mongo your first CRO job, or were you CRO? So Mongo was your
No, my first CRO job was at a small company called Dynamic Ops. So Dynamic
That's
Ops
right. That's right. Yeah.
was a cloud automation company, and I joined just as they were ending a year of 1.75 million in revenue, so quite small.
And how like what was the leap that you have to make from senior leader VP to CRO?
So I have to give express a lot of gratitude to John McMahon, who's been my mentor in several scenarios, and he selflessly, really developed me as a first-time CRO. He didn't really have to do that, but there were, as a CRO, there are a bunch of new things you have to do, especially at a small company that doesn't have the infrastructure. They had never really had a professional CRO before. So building hiring plans and comp plans and, and communicating with the board. These were all, brand new things that I learned how to do, or at least tried, or at least did. I don't know if I learned how to do them, but I did them.
Yeah.
Dynamic ops. Yeah.
And then so you did that for a period, and then you got called from Mongo. Mongo, I mean, Mongo was pretty small when you joined.
Yeah.
I remember because you were right across the street from Phil's Coffee in Palo Alto.
Palo Alto, yeah. I did that at Dynamic Ops. We got acquired by VMware, and then I spent time at a company called ClearSlide, which was
Right,
a
that's where I met you. That's where I met you. That's where I met you. That's
yeah,
where I met
yeah.
you. Yeah,
And there my role was running extra enterprise. So one of the founders ran the down market team, and I ran the up market team, and so I did that for for a few years. And candidly, I didn't really enjoy it. The culture was not a great fit for me. And so when I learned that MongoDB was looking for a CRO, I threw my hat in the ring. And so that was my first sort of big big organization. Like I said, BMC, I had a big organization, but I wasn't the head of sales. So that was my first time running a large-ish organization.
yeah.
But the company itself, to answer your question, was about 30 million in ARR when I joined. So it's still not that big.
Yeah, and I remember, I came to pitch you in the office. In that big table
That's right.
across the street from the
Outreach
Phil's.
wasn't very big then either.
And I think you were, customer number 20 or something, maybe. And we have to look bigger than we are, of course. So we sit there, and I realized that I was getting more out of the conversation that I was given to you. So I just shut up and just let you explain your process. And I was getting you to explain your process to actually sell your outreach, but secretly I was writing it down so I can go back to my own shop and being like, "Hey guys, from now on, this is what we're doing." And I remember that, after the closing, you told me, "Look, if you can deliver 25% improvement in pipeline generation, we'll buy it." So that became sort of like our core, mandate. I'm like, I think you gave us a team in Austin, tiny team, then, and Brian Gerard, the rep, like he went there, and that was all we did for 2 months was get into deliver, prove that we can, lift by 25%, because then you buy. But then it occurred to me that if that was your decision criteria, it's probably everybody else's decision criteria. And I should probably sell outreach that way, as opposed to like tell you about all these activities and sequences and whatever, and being like, I delivered 25% lift, at least, right? So I think I got more out of the relationship that you did. But anyway, so you run that to 100 and then took it public.
Yeah. But by the time I saw it go all the way up to well over 200. But yes,
Oh wow.
we went public. We went public right at 100 million. Companies don't go public at that size anymore. But back then, that was sort of the magic number. If you got to 100 and you were
I
growing,
remember.
that was kind of the criteria. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my plan, and then the goalpost kept moving. Every year it was bigger and bigger and bigger. And I
Yeah.
remember CrowdStrike went public at like almost 400. I'm like, God damn it! Like that's a new bar now. You know what I mean? Um, all right, so you did that, and then you took some time to reflect and think about life, and then you decided to go for CEO. What was it? What was the thinking like?
Yeah. So, I felt I was very proud of the work I had done at MongoDB, and I felt like I was ready for another challenge, and I thought, well, what's the next role? Moving up the organization, the CRO, reports to the CEO, so that must be the next role, and it'll be intellectually challenging, and I'll learn a bunch, and so I decided that should be my next role, and so I looked at a bunch of a bunch of opportunities, for CEO roles, and I picked what seemed like the best one with the best board, and jumped into it.
What was the criteria for you choosing? Like what as you were thinking about this big
Yeah,
landscape.
yeah. I wanted to, I wanted to try to play to my strengths, and so I looked at companies that had a more technical product versus a maybe more simple sort of business app. So I focused on sort of the IT landscape, and my criteria was finding companies where I felt like the missing piece was go to market, where the
Mm.
product was solid, where product market fit was, sort of fairly figured out, and where, if I could implement or install a successful go to market function, the company would do well.
And that reduces the playing field. Or
Yeah, that
I
reduces.
haven't met a company yet that hasn't come to me who that is at this point selling, that tells me, we have a great product. If only we had the same distribution that Outreach does, we'll be so successful. So I can't imagine that actually shortened the list. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people out there with great product.
If I only took what I was hearing from the company, that would be true. But I did my diligence and talked to customers, and I would do my best to track down former employees to kind of get the get the scoop, and ultimately that's what I thought I was walking into. At
Yeah.
Vero, which is where I ultimately ended up, and the way I just said that, I think uh, suggests that it wasn't I didn't find a company that had product market fit. I thought I did, but what I discovered was that the board had made a very compelling case that this was a place where if we get go to market right, the company is poised to accelerate. And I don't think there was. I think they believed that.
Yeah.
Nobody was telling me something that they didn't believe was true. But I think it's very hard for boards to really know what's going on. You're at a board meeting every 6 weeks, and so the reality on the ground versus the board's impression of what was really going on were really quite different.
Yeah.
And so the reality is, the company had some real challenges, and what I discovered was that what the company needed and the skill set that I brought, the alignment wasn't actually that great, to be honest.
Interesting. So you go through that, and now you check all the boxes, right? You rose all the way to sales leader, CRO. You took a company public. You became CEO. So at this point, you hang your cleats. Now you just become a board member, professional board member, get paid to give, be the guy giving advice. So
Yeah.
why go back in the game?
You know, candidly, I can't say that I really enjoyed being a CEO. I think you know,
It's overrated, man. Like it's not fun.
it's
It
lonely.
sounds like a big title, but
It
it's
is
really not.
really lonely. I found it lonely. I feel like, you can't, it's hard to find someone to talk to. And I know you and I had some great conversations during that period. If if you open up with people who report to you, well, they all have an agenda,
Right.
it's just human nature. Oh, the problem is I need more headcount, I need more resources, or somebody else. And you can't really fully open up to the board because otherwise they'll lose confidence in you.
Right.
And so, the best thing for, and my wife is a great partner, but she doesn't understand, my world. And so it was really other CEOs, and frankly, it was you and Giuseppe,
Yep.
Giuseppe and Steve,
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
were the two people that I could trust and I could really open up to. But anyway, I didn't enjoy it because what the company needed was really direction in product roadmap and product leadership, and you know, it was difficult for me to assess the engineering leadership and the product leadership, and so I was sort of along for the ride. I also didn't know how to motivate engineers, and so the ways that I had historically motivated people in sales and held them accountable didn't work very well with engineers at all.
Right.
And so it wasn't fun. It candidly wasn't fun. And so I wasn't ready to hang up my cleats. I like working. I like feeling like I'm adding real value. And so as I thought about my next gig post Vera, I really thought that, okay, as a CEO, as a first time CEO, as a non-founder, first time CEO, the likelihood is you're going to get a company that has problems. Otherwise, the original CEO and
They're all falling knives, all of them. You're just hoping that you catch it like right at the handle. Otherwise, everyone will slice their fingers on it.
yeah, exactly. You're catching a fallen knife, and I'm sure there are some exceptions, but and then my sense is that you only get like a really good CEO role if you're not a first time, you're a second or a third time CEO. Like you look at somebody like Frank Slootman. My understanding is Data Domain had real issues, and he addressed them, and they ended up having a good outcome. And it was then that he was, he was brought into ServiceNow and then Snowflake, and David Echeria got brought into MongoDB after founding and building Blade Logic. Right. And so, as a first-time CEO, you're going to get a set of problems, a basket of problems, and maybe as a second-time CEO, you get a better opportunity. And at that time, Vera was definitely not a success. The company ended up getting acquired after I wasn't there anymore. But I felt like I was going to have to pay my dues with at least one and maybe more of these problem companies. But I felt like as a head of sales, I could probably set myself up at a really good company that had all the makings of success. And so I landed at Trip Actions, which was a really hot company with great metrics and and a very promising future. I was not clairvoyant, and I did not realize that Trip Actions, the name Trip should give it away, is a travel management company. And I joined in January of 2020, and COVID-19.
I think I still think that you did one of the most remarkable jobs as a sales leader when you're selling something that nobody wants to buy. Like you're still closing major deals. I think didn't you close Netflix? Like
no, Netflix was already a customer. We closed Heineken.
Did you close Heineken? Like did you close the largest deal ever?
Amazing. But
it's like I said, you operate as if COVID never happened. So like I'm still in awe of what you did there. All right, so to wrap up, so as a CRO who has been CEO, what is your advice to other CROs who've not been CEOs? Like, what should they be thinking about doing or not doing?
If you have a passion to be a CEO, I respect that. I can identify with it. I had it. I don't know if I had a passion. I had an intellectual curiosity. That was what it was for me. But whatever it is, if you have a motivation to be a CEO, I'd say go in with your eyes wide open and know that there is a high likelihood that your first CEO job, you're going to be handed a very messy situation. And it's only if you are successful in that first one that you're going to get one that really has the ingredients to take off. If you're early in your career and you have a deep passion about a problem that needs to be solved, I would say go found a company and know that there's a 95 or 98% chance that you won't be successful. But if it's a burning passion and you're committed and you're willing to make it your life's work, then go do that. But otherwise, personally, well, I've found my place, and my place is I'm very passionate about sales. I feel that it's the most meritocratic of all the functions in business, and I think I find it extremely rewarding on a human level. While I may have gotten into sales leadership, to satisfy some like insecurity or to please my family, it quickly became extremely rewarding because of seeing people develop, seeing people realize their potential, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else at this point.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what a great way to wrap up. Thank you again for making this hour available to us. Yeah, I really enjoy every single one of our conversations, whether it's filmed or live or whatever. But cool. No, I really appreciate doing this.
Anytime.